Joan of Arc was born in 1412 in Domremy, a French village in the northeast of France. Her father's name was Jacques d'Arc, and her mother was Isabelle Romée, and both were peasants. Joan had 3 older brothers named Jean, Pierre, and Jacques, and an older sister named Catherine. The girl grew up amidst a turbulent political time. At that time, her country was going through the 100 Years' War, which was a lasting conflict between France and England. It had begun in 1337, after the death of King Charles IV of France, who left no heirs. The throne was claimed by Edward III, who was the King of England. Not all French people were pleased with the new king who took power, and this dynastic issue, together with economic struggles and ideological differences, gave rise to several battles between these two great powers. Joan of Arc's family led a very humble life, and so, early on, the girl started working. She looked after the flock, and her mother taught her how to sew so that she could help the family with the sustenance and housework. Due to this poverty and struggles which she grew up, the young peasant girl did not have time to study and never learned to read nor write. The routine of Joan's family, with intense work in the crop fields, was occasionally interrupted so that they could attend church. The whole family was deeply Christian and the bearer of intense faith. At the age of 13, the young woman began to have visions and to hear voices that she claimed to have a divine source. They told her she had the great mission to fight for her country and to help expel the English from French territory. As the young woman herself once told, on the first occasion she heard a voice, she was in her father's garden, and the sound came from where the church was located. Joan of Arc also said that the first voice she heard was from Saint Michael, and that, with her own eyes, and in a very clear and palpable way, she saw the saint sighted by angels. She also reported that she heard voices from Saint Margaret of Antioch and Saint Catherine of Alexandria. According to Joan of Arc, the voice was that of an angel and from God. She, on one occasion, declared, "I believe that this voice comes from God, and, by His command, I believe as firmly as I believe in the Christian faith." She also said that the voice was very beautiful, modest, and sweet. After the first contact that took place in the church, the voices continued to communicate with the girl and insisted on saying that she had to fulfill her mission. She needed to talk to the throne's heir and reveal her case to him. It was then that, on one occasion, Johann Laxard, who was the husband of Joan's cousin, took her to the city of Vaucouleurs so that the peasant girl could meet Captain Baudricourt. But the meeting between the two did not go well, as the captain did not believe the girl's story and became very suspicious of her words. Joan, however, was persistent, and after about a year, Baudricourt agreed to send the young girl under escort to Chinon, so that she could meet there with the heir. From that moment, from head to toe, the young peasant girl began to dress in men's suits. When Joan of Arc arrived in Chinon, she went directly to the castle where Charles VII was. The heir felt intrigued by the situation, and so was Captain Baudricourt, who was also suspicious of the girl. It was then that he had the idea of disguising himself in the middle of several noblemen, mixing with them in one of the chambers of the castle. This was a way of testing the peasant girl. She had never before seen the heir, and so it would certainly be impossible to recognize him among the crowd, unless of course there really was contact between her and the sky above. And, much to the surprise of everyone present, as soon as she entered that place, Joan of Arc quickly recognized him. Shortly after she was introduced to the heir, the young woman began to call herself Joan the Maiden. Nevertheless, despite this impressive feat, more evidence was needed about the truthfulness than the young woman proclaimed, and for this reason, the peasant girl was subjected to some tests. The first of which was a physical test to assess her virginity to know whether she was pure. This verification was done by ladies of the court and later by Yolanda of Aragon, Queen of Sicily. They also made a spiritual test in which they dialogued with her, asking different questions about her personal life and also about her faith. Joan proved to be lucid, coherent, and secure in her answers. She was then sent to the city of Poitiers to be questioned by a group of experienced theologians of great knowledge. After a long conversation, and after asking Joan of Arc many questions, they gave the following account of this fact. She talked to everyone, publicly and privately, but in her one found no evil, only goodness, humility, virginity, piety, integrity, and simplicity. Joan seemed ready and determined to take over the French army front, and members of royalty and the church were now willing to support her. After the tests and conquering the trust of the royalty and the church, she asked them to write a letter and send it to the King of England. The writing, dictated by the maiden, said that she had been sent by God, that she was the new military leader, and that in one way or another she would force the English out of France. If they did not leave by the peaceful request she was sending, they would be killed if she found them. She also said that, if they did not hear her through the words she wrote, her war cry would be the greatest in France for 1,000 years. She made it clear that the celestial forces did not want the English in their soil. The members of the French court and the theologians were finally convinced of the purity and truthfulness of what the humble peasant woman reported. They noticed that if they denied the girl's request to command soldiers and lead battles for her country, they could be denying an order coming directly from heaven. Given the circumstances, the king handed her a sword, showing his confidence. From then on, preparations began. At first, Joan of Arc's garments were provided, which consisted of a fine armor made especially for the young woman, as well as the use of a banner made by a French painter who lived in Tours. He made it with the national symbol of France, a golden fleur-de-lis, with the words Jesus and Mary, and an image of Christ, with an angel on each side. Joan was also presented with a white horse and needed a brief period to cope with the heavy armor, the mount, and also the handling of the spear. She soon became familiar with these items, and her skill with them was remarkable, a fact that caught the attention of several individuals. Finally, with her short hair, properly dressed, mounted on her horse and armed with her banner, in a leading position, standing in front of her soldiers, she set out for Orléans, which had been taken over by the English for several months. At first, when she stood before them, Joan was intensely mocked and slandered by her rivals. They had heard of her, but they did not take seriously a woman commanding troops, and they believed even less that she did so by order of heaven. However, despite hearing their insults and provocations, Joan ignored the rivals' disbelief and remained determined in her mission. The maiden wanted to free Orléans, but before that, she took part in a battle at Tours, when Joan of Arc took an arrow between her shoulder and her neck. The French were worried and almost lost the focus during the mission, until the maiden bravely stood up and began to encourage her men to fight. Her bravery enticed the troops, who, inspired, went up against the enemy, leaving the English truly terrified. In fact, on that occasion, a captain who had once cursed the peasant woman, frightened, plunged into the water and was never seen again. Joan of Arc was definitely starting to shine and reveal her leadership skills. Soon after, it took only 4 days to, with major success, make the enemies leave Orléans. This victory was decisive in strengthening the French troops and motivating the country's population. After that, her name, which was already known to both the English and the French, began to spread, and the mocking and laughter of the enemies was replaced by recognition of the country's prominent military command and a concern about what was to come. After lifting the siege of Orléans, the maiden went to the heir and suggested that he go to Rome to be crowned, as he was not yet officially king of France. Joan of Arc believed that the coronation was a will from heaven. She led Charles to Reims, and on July 17th, a Sunday, in the city cathedral, in front of many, including relatives of Joan of Arc, the coronation ceremony took place. Joan had followed the advice of the heavenly voices. She liberated Orléans, collaborated in the crowning of the heir, and, in addition to those achievements, she also won and stood out in several other conflicts, such as that of Meung, Jargeau, Beaugency, and Patouille. With so many important achievements, the peasant heroic was consolidating herself more and more as someone who really had a special and great destiny ahead. Nevertheless, Joan of Arc's life was about to take a tragic turn.